Welcome to Live Coding with me, Matt Groves. I'm just going to check real quick. I set up an IFTTT that should automatically tweet out that I started a stream. So I just want to peek over there and check to make sure that happened. And it looks like it has not happened yet. So maybe it'll be delayed. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Not a big deal. All right. Thank you for joining me. I have a few things I want to go over here before we get to the coding. The first thing I want to talk about is affiliate status, which I think I have reached affiliate status on Twitch. So what does affiliate? So first of all, yay for affiliate status. I want to say thank you to everyone who has been following me and hanging out in my streams. I really appreciate you joining. Speaking of which, there's Calvin Allen, who's my ride or die. Also a mod here, so don't cross him. Do not cross him. And I believe, Calvin, you're also my first subscriber as well. So thank you very much. And that's one of the things with affiliate is that you can now get subscriptions, and there's like a whole revenue sharing thing with Twitch, which is great. I'm not really here on Twitch to make any money, but one of the things that affiliate status is required for is C# Fritz. So another plug for him. It's a twitch.tv/C# Fritz, and he has a Twitch team. So when you get to partner status on Twitch, which is a whole nother level after affiliate, you're able to create these teams. And Fritz has a team that he's putting together. There's several requirements. One of them is the content you are doing, which is live coding technology related. You have to, be respectful to people in the chat, answer questions politely, things like that. And one of the things that's also a hard requirement is you have to have affiliate status. So now that I have affiliate status, I'm going to try to see if I can join Fritz's live coding team, because there's some awesome people on there, and that would be great. So anyway, the team is called Live Coders, and you can see the link here. Let me just fire up, zoom it a little bit. That might be a little bit small of a font. I'm using Notepad here. There we go. Twitch.tv/team/livecoders, and you can find some more information about that. He's actually got a GitHub repo set up. Go to github.com/livecoders/home. I'm not a member there yet. Hoping, fingers crossed. It's a relatively new thing that he's put together, so got to figure out the whole process for that. So that's the affiliate status. The other important thing, very important thing about affiliate status, thank you, Null Sprite, and thanks for joining. The most important thing about affiliate status is I can now create. Hey, and thanks for the follow, Jesus Deluxe or Jesus Deluxe. Either way, thank you for following. And that video, that little clip you just saw, that little sound clip was Calvin Allen saying "Bada bing, bada boom." And so, speaking of affiliate status and "Bada bing, bada boom," the thing you can do once you have affiliate status, you can create your own custom emotes. So I created the first emote, which I believe is still pending right now, which emote has to be approved, I think, manually by someone at Twitch. But it's Calvin's face, and it's going to be just the bada bing, bada boom emote. So please look forward to that. I don't know how long it'll take to get that approved, but that's coming up. Okay, so we got that stuff covered. Great. Next thing, I wanted to shout out to Star Trek, because I know there at least Carrie Payette and Andrew Maxey were on my stream a couple of nights ago. We were talking about Star Trek. I'm super pumped. It's probably one of my top 2 or 3 favorite conferences ever is Star Trek. It's a one-day conference in Columbus, Ohio. You do a whole day full of normal conference stuff in a movie theater. And after the conference is over, then you join all your fellow conference goers, and you watch a film. Hence the name Star Trek. The original film, the very first conference was the Star Trek movie, the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie. But since then, they've done another Star Trek movie, but mostly they've stuck to those Marvel movies, which I'm not a huge fan of, but a lot of people are. And one of the cool things they've done to speed the process along of signing into Star Trek is they send you a box full of goodies, your lanyard, information, stuff like that. So I thought I would take a second to show it to you, because they do a lot of hard work in this box. I don't know if it's going to show up in my camera or not. There it is. This is the Star Trek box. It's got all kinds of, I guess these are Avengers artwork on it, and like various superheroes. And there's the Star Trek logo, which kind of looks like the Star Trek com badge with the S on it. So very cool. And lots of interesting stuff in here. Some swag and some goodies. T-shirt, which I have quite a collection of Star Trek T-shirts at this point, but a T-shirt. One of the things that come with it, maybe you can see this here. It's a little squeezy penguin guy. So you might think it's Linux, but if you look, if you can see closer here, I'm going to put it closer to the camera. It is a Bold Penguin squishy. So Bold Penguin is a startup based here in the Columbus area. So clearly they put in a little squishy penguin, which my daughter really likes the squishy stuff. So I'll probably give her this cute little penguin. She'll like that. And the other thing they sent, which it's very nice. I'm not into these Funko Pop deals at all. Honestly, I don't get it. But they sent a nice little, looks like it's a Stanley Funko Pop, but it's got like a sort of a aged bronze statue look to it. It's pretty cool. So again, I'll probably give this to one of the kids. I gave the last Funko Pop to them. So there we go. Some cool stuff they sent. And there's some other cool stuff in the box. I'm not going to spoil it for those of you who are still waiting on your box. Some other fun stuff in there. All right, so Star Trek is April 26th. That is next Friday? Yeah, next Friday. Wow, coming right up. I will be there. So I'm not going to be speaking, but I will be at the conference, volunteering in some capacity. So if you're at Star Trek, say hi. And if I see you, I will say hi as well. Cool. All right. Let's get down to some coding, I guess. On the last stream, I started to build the CSV export stuff that's going to, or not CSV export stuff. It was export. So I built some code to put data into our, I'll bring up the diagram here, to put data into our loyalty program database to kind of simulate the day-to-day operations of the loyalty program. You know, people earning points and doing stuff and signing up. That's going to just put some data in here. And I created the CSV export that's going to, I haven't set up the nightly part of it yet, but it's going to export data into a CSV file. So that's how far I got last time, I believe. And then since that stream, I've done some more work. This is for my job, so I can't just only do it while I'm streaming. I made some more progress on it to actually find that CSV file and then start importing it into our Customer 360 data platform, which I'm using Couchbase for. So I've done part of that CSV import. What I'd like to do today is, over here, finish that CSV import, and we'll discuss that a little bit, how robust I want to make it, and what kind of corners I'm going to be cutting, things like that. And then I'm going to probably set up a nightly task to export that CSV. And there's lots of different ways you can go about it. And that should be not export, but import CSV. Import CSV into Couchbase. Now, the way I'm going to do this is actually using the .NET SDK, but there are some other options. There's a command line tool called CB import, which can just do what it says in the tin. It can import CSV or JSON directly into Couchbase. So there's some pros and cons to use either of those approaches. I'm going to go with the C# approach because I can do some extra stuff with logging and error checking and if I wanted to, eventually some transformations, things like that. Whereas CB import can do a lot of those things, but it's going to require some extra scripting and things to handle any sort of error conditions or stuff like that. So neither of them is a bad choice. There's a trade-off either way. I'm going to stick with C# here. And if we get time, I'm also going to start on the bottom part here, creating a REST API for our, again, simulated online store CRM. And if we get to that, I'll dive into more about what that actually means. But that's also going to live in our Customer 360 simulator project. But instead of streaming data through Kafka or pushing data out through CSV, this is going to sort of work in the opposite direction. The Couchbase data platform is going to be making requests to this REST API and pulling in data into the well, maybe, into the staging bucket at least, or maybe even the bucket after that, which we haven't even got to that point yet. But I might start by creating that REST API. We'll see how far we get today. As always, if you have questions about anything going on, there's a lot of stuff that I take for granted that I do on a day-to-day basis. If anything looks strange, please ask a question. As I've said in previous streams, my dad taught me at a young age, the only stupid question is the one you don't ask. So please feel free to stop me at any time. One other thing you might notice is, thanks to Calvin Allen, I've added a tool called Karnak, which keeps crashing on me, by the way. Let me run it as administrator this time. So the idea with Karnak is that it's supposed to show, as you can see right there, if I'm doing any shortcut keys. So I can Control C, Control V, Control X, etc. You'll see the shortcut keys on the screen because you can't see the hands on my keyboard. And again, sometimes I take those for granted, so it's helpful to show that there as I'm streaming. If anyone knows why that keeps crashing, by the way, please let me know, because I've been using it all day today to get used to it, and it has crashed 2 or 3 times. Okay, so let's get on with it. I've got Postgres here running in Docker, as before. I've also got Couchbase running in Docker. Coral, good to see you, man. Thank you for the thumbs up. Thanks for stopping by. Couchbase running also in Docker. I've got the one staging bucket in here with no data in it just yet. But we will be putting data in there shortly. So let's bring up Visual Studio here. I'm still using 2019. And I'll just take you through some of the stuff. Oh, that's spelled wrong. Loyalty. Interesting that the function keys aren't showing up in Karnak. Let me bring up Karnak here so you can see what it looks like. Because I kind of want the function keys to show, because I use those from time to time. Only show keys that have Control Shift Alt Windows. That's not really what I want, but I don't want every key to be shown either. Well, I have to do some. There's no like magical show function keys checkbox. So if you have any hints for that, let me know. But in the meantime, what I just did here was I pressed F2, which is rename in a lot of Windows stuff, but also in Visual Studio. So that's why I renamed that file. Okay, so this is the table that lives in Postgres. And so if I switch over to HeidiSQL, you can see that table is there with those same fields. All right. And what we worked on last time is I've got this sort of test harness controller thing that just basically allows me to hit these services that I've created, these repositories of services, through a REST API, just for kind of demonstration and testing purposes. And I worked on export CSV, which we'll right-click and go to implementation. And so all this does is, I went through this last time, we're going to get all the members out of PostSharp, the entire contents of the table. I'm using a select star there. If you have any suggestions for better ways to bulk query or bulk export Postgres data, again, there's probably a command line to export from a table in Postgres to a CSV file. That's another option for you. If you're more script-oriented, more ops-oriented, that sort of thing. And then I'm just exporting that to a CSV file using this CSV writer library, which I imported last time. And it's just timestamping it like so in the file name. And as you'll see in a minute here, I'm also looking at the last write date in the file system. Is going to come in handy too. But the timestamp is really just so that if I need to hit this multiple times for testing purposes, it's going to create a new file name each time. It's going to dump this into a CSV exports folder, which I can show you here. For a File Explorer, we've got in the web, CSV exports. Here's the 2 files I created last time. Just, I can open these up in Excel if you want to see them, but there's the contents I exported last time. It's going to be different this time because that database got blown away and restarted with Docker, but of course in reality it's going to be relatively static. Okay, so that's how far I got last time. So what I worked on in the meantime is the other end of this, Normally this would be in two separate programs, right? But this is, again, this program here is not what I'm trying to teach. This is just a tool to help me build a tutorial for all this integration stuff. But the import part of it. So I created another service called Loyalty CSV Import Service. You can see it lives over here in the core project. And we'll get to this bucket stuff in a second. Just kind of ignore that for now. But this is the method that I kind of skeletoned out a little bit. Put a lot of to-dos in there. This class, as it is right now, might be doing too much. One of the ways I like to judge that, just by glancing, is if a function takes up more than one screen. And I know there's a lot of to-dos in here, but this function is taking up just about the entire screen. The other thing, if you're describing the class, you're describing the function, if you have to use the word and, it's probably also doing too much. So this imports from CSV and it reads a CSV and it inserts into Couchbase. So I use the word and, it's probably doing too much. But for now, we're going to leave it this way. We can always refactor it later. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so here is the method. The first thing you need to do is find the newest CSV file in that target folder, if there is one. So I created a method called getNewestCSVPath. So it's actually going to find the path of the CSV file. So let's just go examine that. What I'm using here is the system. What's the namespace for this one? System, I think it's system.io. System.io has this directory info, so you can give it a directory and get information about stuff in that directory. For instance, I want to get all the files that are star.csv. And then I can use a couple link methods to say, well, order that whole list by descending order, the last write time. So the newest file first, the newest CSV file first, and give me the first one. First or default. So if there are no CSV files, first or default is going to return a null object. And so what right here I'm saying, return CSV files. That should be CSV file, I think. That's singular. CSV file, because I have the first or default. So if the CSV file is there, it's going to return that. This question mark basically is a null check. It's going to return the full name of the folder, which is a string, or it's going to return null. All right. And just a little note here, I may want to add some logging to this. When you're doing these kinds of operations, when you're moving data around, expect them to break. Expect these things to go wrong. And it's really good to have some logging in place so you know where exactly it went wrong. Oh, it broke on this record because who knows what. But with logging, we can see, okay, exactly where it broke so we can more easily diagnose it. I haven't added any logging framework to this project yet. I'm going to leave that to do there for now. Okay, so when this program returns, it's going to have a string. It's going to either be a string with some path or it's going to be a null. If it's null, just bail out. And again, I may want to log that, but I may assume that this method is doing the logging. Not quite sure about that yet. But anyway, it's just going to bail out if it can't find a file. Otherwise, if we keep going, we're going to get null reference exceptions and that kind of stuff. Okay. The next thing we need to do is we only ever want to import CSV files one time. And so what I could do is I could either delete the files as they come in, or I can just save that information somewhere that, hey, I finished importing this file, so if that's still the newest file, don't import it again. So I have a little method here to check to make sure that this file is newer than the last one that I imported. There's lots of ways to do that, but right now this is just doing nothing. It's returning true because we're in testing. But what I would probably do in this place is I'm going to store that record somewhere to say this data was imported and just keep a running log somewhere of that. So I haven't done that yet. And if it's not newer, so if it's not a new CSV file, we're just going to bail out. And again, maybe log it. All right, so at this point now, we actually have a CSV file, and we actually want to import that data into Couchbase. So I'm going to open it with the stream reader here and CSV reader. So I just sort of copied and pasted this part from the CSV reader documentation. And then you can say csv.getRecords. This will return all records from the CSV. It'll put each row of that CSV into whatever type I specify. Now, I could create a C# class here and define what fields I expect to be imported. However, if that CSV structure changes, if the names of this field change, let me show you a CSV. Let's show you here in Notepad what it looks like. This is the CSV that's generated from Postgres. So it's ID, password, first name, last name, points. I could put all those into a C# class, and then CSV, our CSV helper would know to put the number 2 into the ID field, put this password into the password field, etc. However, going forward, keep in mind I'm putting this data into a NoSQL database that does not have a schema. Postgres does, Couchbase does not. So if somewhere down the road, Postgres adds more fields to this table, I may or may not care about them in Couchbase, but I may want to just import them anyway. So if they added another field like, I don't know, foo, and this has a foo field on it, XYZ, etc., right? And maybe it's optional, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4. When I import the CSV, if I use a predefined C# class, it's going to basically ignore this foo field because I didn't tell C# about a foo field. It only knows about these. However, if I use dynamic here, which is a C# type to represent objects dynamically, C# is not a dynamic language, but it has a type called dynamic, then whatever records come in there will be imported into this records variable, this records list right here. This is going to be a enumerable of dynamic objects. Okay. So going forward, this means that I don't have to come back here and change my program if Postgres decides to add more columns, if my member loyalty system adds more columns. And which is totally fine. If there's more columns being added, I probably want to bring those into Couchbase. And Couchbase, I don't need to tell it at all about new columns. It's just going to store it as JSON, as you'll see here in a second. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to grab all the records from the CSV. Now, I'm a little concerned about this line. I'm using a small set of test data, maybe a dozen or so records. In a production system, this could be 1 million records. It could be hundreds of thousands of records. I'm concerned about, is this going to load everything from a CSV into memory? Or is it going to be some sort of stream? It's a stream reader. Is this going to give me like it's an IEnumerable? Is that going to be like a just-in-time sort of reading the CSV file? Or is it going to load it onto memory? And this goes back to why you should use logging in your program, because if I try to use this in production and 1 million records just fills up RAM on whatever machine this is running, it's going to have an out-of-memory exception, and that's going to be a problem. So I'm concerned about this. There are other ways to use CSV. CSV dot, I don't know. You can do like a loop of them. I think it's a CSV reader, so you could do like a CSV dot read or a can read, so you can loop through it and do one record at a time. Again, I don't know the details of CSV helper, if it's going to be smart about memory or not, but let's just assume it is for now. And that's why I'm using dynamic there, so I'm going to cut that part out. All right, the next thing we're going to do, and I want to talk about pool size here. Let's do that down here, I think. Yeah. So I'm going to create a new list of documents. Now this iDocument, this is the first time I'm actually using something from the Couchbase SDK. Couchbase is a document database. So let me show it to you over here. I have a staging bucket. It's kind of like a database, or the term database in relational. It's a bucket. It's a collection of documents. So if you hear that noise in the background, it's they're working on the some remodeling here. But so Matt's document, each document has a key, and each document contains some JSON. So this is fundamentally different than a relational database in that I don't have to specify the different columns and different fields that I want in here. So I could just add another one. No changing of schema or anything like that. It's just storing JSON. All right. So I need to take those CSV records. Each row from the CSV is going to correspond to one document here in Couchbase. So to do that in .NET, I'll create this a list of I documents, because I'm going to be importing a bunch of them. Loop through all the records from CSV. And then for each record I find in CSV, I want to create a new document in Couchbase. And again, I'm using dynamic type here. I'm not specifying a C# class. I could, but I'm going to lose some flexibility there. In some situations, you don't want all those new fields to be picked up, and that's totally fine. For my purposes, dynamic is going to be just fine. I'm specifying a key for each new record that's being created. I'm just going to give it loyalty -member whatever the ID was of the record coming in. The content itself, this is any object you want to specify. It's got to match this type you specified up here, but any object, and that will be serialized to JSON by the .NET SDK, the Couchbase.NET SDK. It's going to serialize that to JSON. So any object there. And then this part, I'm not sure, but I'm not sure if I want to do this or not, but in Couchbase, you can also specify an expiration time for your documents, also known as a TTL, or a time to live, and say, you're basically telling Couchbase, here's a document, I want you to hold on to this document, but after a certain period of time, get rid of that document. I want it gone. I only want this document to exist temporarily. And since we're importing data into a staging bucket, my thought was, well, this data should not live in staging indefinitely. So let's give it an expiration time. And I gave it an expiration time of 90 seconds. And I may shorten that down to demonstrate this. But this is in milliseconds. And I'm not really sure if I need a TTL just yet, but I thought I'd leave it in there. You don't have to specify a TTL. You can tell Couchbase, by default, it's going to have an expiration of 0, which means it's not going to expire. It's going to stay in there indefinitely. Okay, so I'm creating this document. I'm adding the document to this list. So at this point, I'm not actually talking to Couchbase yet. I'm just creating this huge list of documents that I want to put into Couchbase. This next part is where I'm actually going to interact with Couchbase. And I think I neglected to cover this at the beginning, but this method is asynchronous. And this is why. Because there's asynchronous methods in Couchbase. One of them is insert async. And I can give insert async an entire collection of documents and say, just as a batch, here's 1,000 documents, insert them for me, please. And it's asynchronous because behind the scenes, I believe, I have to dig into the code to know for sure, but I believe this just loops through those documents and makes individual asynchronous calls of each of those documents. I've got a little ping over here. Just making sure. Someone's chatting me. Anyway, so it's going to loop through those and individually insert them asynchronously. So this has to be asynchronous, and the method calling it has to be asynchronous. And by the way, back here, this method for the REST API also has to be asynchronous. So it's got to be asynchronous all the way down. Okay. All right, and then, so once these are inserted, we're just going to wait for that. I also wanted to mention pool size and muxing in a second here, but at the end, I want to say track that. So we've gotten to this point with no errors, track it, so store the file name somewhere, maybe the current date time, or maybe both, and say, so next time we do this process again, I can check to make sure that I'm not inserting duplicate data. Not that it would really hurt, but it's just kind of pointless. And another approach, of course, would be, I think I mentioned this already, just delete the CSV file after we're done. That's another approach as well. I'm assuming, though, that maybe we want to keep a record of all the CSV files. You could also, again, if you're doing this in the command line, you could script this so that it could back them up, or it could compress them, or keep track of them, or whatever you want it to do. But we'll do some sort of tracking there. Okay. So right now, this should work. Let me go ahead and open up the website here. And so I've added this. We're going to create some loyalty data first. So right now, there's no data in there at all. Just completely empty. So we'll go ahead and try this out. We're going to add a bunch of data. Hopefully it works. Yep, still works. Add a bunch of data to it. If I refresh this, bam, we got a bunch of data in there. Great. Okay, so just imagine the customers are doing things that earn them points. We can update some of them as well. Give them some more points. So if I refresh this, you'll see, look at the points column here. It's changing. Customers getting more points. All right, so at this point, I'm going to produce the CSV. And that should also still work. Over here, CSV exports, I'll just sort this by latest. So I've got a new CSV file that corresponds to the data I just created. There it is. And next thing, we're going to try our consume CSV. So this is going to look for the latest CSV file, read all of that, and put it into Couchbase. And so right now in here, Couchbase, we can see our staging bucket has no documents in it. Try it out, execute, success, retrieve, there's a document. So that CSV file was consumed and put into Couchbase. And you can see I've got all the data here. It's in JSON form instead of CSV. Instead of a table, it's in JSON form. So we've gone a full tour of data. We've gone from a normal table to a CSV version of the table to JSON version of that data. So this data is getting around. Yeah. All right. So there we go. So that's it. That's the CSV portion of it here. So this is the nightly CSV we're talking about. So the nightly part is what's next. This is a job that should run. It should create a CSV file every night, and it should consume one shortly after that every night. Lots of ways to schedule that. Again, if you're going in the command line route, you can set up cron jobs and things like that to run these export and import commands on a scheduled basis and do all kinds of checking and logging. You do bash scripting, PowerShell scripts, all that kind of stuff. Totally possible. Totally fine to do it that way. I'm just doing it all in C# here. There's some pros and cons, different approaches. All right. I guess I didn't really talk about the bucket stuff. Let's come back to that a little bit. This is going to be important going forward as well. So this loyalty CSV import service is expecting something called a bucket provider. And from the bucket provider, this is how I get an actual bucket object that I can interact with in Couchbase. The bucket object is what I use to read and write records from Couchbase. I'm saying, give me the staging bucket. So if I go back over here to my startup, I've added this new service here, this Couchbase service. And that all comes from a dependency I added called Couchbase Extensions Dependency Injection. So that is an open source library on GitHub, also in NuGet, that allows you to just do this, services.add-couchbase to a .NET Core program. Now, inside of this, I could pull this from a configuration file, just like I did up here, I'm hard coding all this information into C#. Also, probably not a good idea to do that. You want to be able to change the config without recompiling the program. But again, we're keeping it simple here. And so I specify, with Couchbase, you specify servers, right? So Couchbase is meant to be clustered. There are multiple machines running in a sort of a cluster that all communicate with each other. So what you can do is you can specify each URL of that cluster individually, which is a good idea. Or you can just specify one of them. Either way you do it, Couchbase is going to, the .NET tool here is going to be able to find all of those servers, either way. It's just the more you specify here, the better, because if one of them goes down, it'll fall back to the next one and go on from there. Now, I only have the one node running. In fact, if I bring up this Couchbase console, if I go to servers, there's only the one here running. I'm not running, it's a cluster technically, but it's a cluster with just a single node. So if I want to scale out for bigger deployments, I'd add more nodes here. I can split up the services between the nodes, etc. But this is all just local to my machine, so it's just one single node. I'm specifying credentials here. Really, really poor choice of credentials. Do not use administrator as your login. Do not use password as your password. Those are very easy to guess. Don't use those. Use something more secure. And connection pool is what I wanted to talk about. By default, the Couchbase .NET SDK, and this is where it gets a little above my league in terms of how this works. But there's a connection pool of the network connections that go from your application here over to the Couchbase cluster. And I think by default, the maximum size of that is 2. So there's going to be 2 total connections. Now, connections to Couchbase are different than connections to like a relational database just because of the way Couchbase works. However, because I'm doing this CSV import process, which could be thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of records, I want to increase this pool size a little bit higher. So there's more connections I can work with to more efficiently handle all that traffic. So I'm bumping it up to a max size of 10. And so I don't know what the theoretical ceiling is for that. I would say at some point it's going to be, you're going to run into the physics problem of, my network can only handle so much electricity, right? So that number may vary. I'm not saying 10 is the best. I'm not saying it should be higher or lower, but I'm just pointing out you can change, you can tweak and tune this connection pool size. All right, everything else here is the same. So when I do this services.add Couchbase thing, then what that's doing is it's adding the iBucket provider to the dependency injection container. So I can then use that to get a bucket. Now behind the scenes, there is a cluster object, which you don't have to interact with in this case at all, but the cluster object, which is more like the DB connection, like what we saw with Postgres and MySQL. And so this is just going to handle the details of that for you. I mean, that cluster object should be something that's not disposed of on a regular basis. It should just be kept alive as a singleton like I'm doing up here. But all those details are being handled by this add Couchbase. Okay, so we're in good shape here. Yeah, we're in good shape. So that's all the progress I've made so far since the last stream. What I want to do now is, a comment from Coral. It's likely a matter of available connections on the servers and how much overhead you're incurring managing all those connections versus how much you actually have to push through them. Yes, absolutely. And this is something we could probably dive into and get really deep on, go down a rabbit hole. But mainly I just wanted to point out that it's something you can and should think about changing for an application like this. But the default setting is usually pretty good for a normal web application. But I'm creating this crazy CSV import thing, and so I wanted to bump up the number of connections a little higher. All right. Good. So the next thing I want to do is, let's go ahead and add Hangfire to this. So Hangfire. Let's talk about Hangfire a little bit. Hangfire.io is currently down. Oh, there we go. So Hangfire.io is it's a really interesting tool to do background processing in .NET and .NET Core. And I've done background processing in the past. One thing that really appeals to me about this is that you don't need a separate process. It's not required. It's possible, and you may want to do that eventually, but you don't have to have a separate process to start firing off background tasks. So there's lots of different types you can do, like fire and forget, recurring, which is what I'm going to do today, delayed jobs. With the pro version, you can do batches and things like that. But all I really need right now is this recurring jobs here. It's also going to give us this very cool dashboard just automatically. So if I can get this to work, it's going to be very, very cool. And now what I've actually got here is a blog post that I wrote back in December about using Hangfire with ASP.NET. And this is one of the things that I think I've said this before. One of the reasons I blog is so that I remember how to do this stuff, and I keep a sort of a breadcrumb trail for myself. Although, I've always been bothered by that breadcrumb analogy, because if you remember the story of Hansel and Gretel, they put down breadcrumbs so they can find their way back out, but it doesn't work, right? The birds come and eat the breadcrumbs, so they can't find their way back out. So it's like we're using this metaphor, but the metaphor is sort of the opposite of what we're trying to do. Anyway, that's a weird tangent. Background job. So you need to do 3 things with Hangfire. Hangfire It requires I believe it requires, I'm not 100% sure of that, but I'm going to use anyway, persistence. So I need to tell ASP.NET about Hangfire, just like I did with Couchbase. I need to add it as a service. I need to tell it which database to use. I think by default it goes to SQL Server. There's a lot of plugins for other databases. I'm going to use Couchbase, of course. And then start firing off jobs. So let's start by adding Hangfire. And the way I do that, I didn't put it in here, did I? So anyway, the way I do it is here. I'm just going to go to NuGet, and I'm going to browse for Hangfire. Now I could just install plain old Hangfire here, but I'm going to skip a step actually. There should be a Hangfire Couchbase NuGet library, which will install Hangfire core as well. Core says, I prefer the second brain metaphor. Leaves mind free if I'm offloading stuff into separate notes or documents, as opposed to the breadcrumbs. Yeah, second brain. I like that. If I only had a second brain. All right, so I'm just going to install Hangfire Couchbase. So that's going to do both, as you'll see here. It's going to update. It's going to install Hangfire core and Hangfire Couchbase together. So I'm killing two birds here. I've not practiced this, so this is all brand new stuff right now. Let's just see if I can get it to work or if it breaks everything. Okay. So back here, configure services. Find my, did I close my, yeah, here it is. I'm just going to copy and paste this. That's how I roll. Copy and paste. Services. Add Hangfire. Why isn't it finding add Hangfire? Doesn't seem to like that. Services add Hangfire. I'll see why that wouldn't work. Did I add it to the right project? Dependencies, NuGet. Yeah, Hangfire's right there, which includes Hangfire. Oh, you know what? I think there's another project I need to add. So that adds Hangfire and Couchbase, but it doesn't add the actual .NET Core stuff, I don't think. Hangfire. ASP. You know what? I'm just going to go here, back to my blog post, and I'm going to put this all on GitHub for myself as well, somewhere. I thought I did. You know what? I didn't. But I know I have some elsewhere on my computer. So I use this personally for a project I use for categorizing and cataloging family photos. It has some jobs that run in the background. So let me just have a quick look at that. I'll open up this one in Visual Studio. That'll be easy. Yeah, 2 viewers today. Kind of slow. I think I'm competing with a couple other streamers that I follow, so that's totally cool. We can just chill. All right. So best pictures. I think it's in dependencies, right? I'm actually a minor contributor to the Hangfire Couchbase project, so I have the raw project in there. But let me see if there's another library I'm forgetting, like for those extensions installed. Hangfire. Looks like it's just Hangfire. Am I forgetting something? Hangfire core. Do I need to, I need to install Hangfire core by itself? as well. That would be strange. It's worth a shot. I figured just installing Hangfire alone would do that. Hangfire, and there's Hangfire core. So I'm a little confused about that, but we'll go ahead and install it anyway. Hangfire core. Why isn't this showing up? What am I doing wrong here? Using Hangfire. It's not happy with me. We just, did it change or something recently? Well, when in doubt, go and visit the documentation. Getting started. Yeah, so this is by default. It uses SQL Server extensions I think are built in. Installation Hangfire core, which I did that. Hangfire SQL Server. I'm not using SQL Server, but I should. That shouldn't matter at this point. This isn't. Here we go. ASP.NET Core applications. That's what I want. Hangfire ASP.NET Core. Aha! I thought there was something like that. There we go. How did I miss a 1.9 million download library? Okay, there we go. Using Couchbase storage engine, this configuration part here. I'll just, I believe that is expecting client configuration, which is, we'll get to that in a second. Client configuration. So let's paste that in there. And then I have to give it a bucket. So I'm going to call it, we're going to customer 360 Hangfire. This is the Couchbase bucket that is going to be storing all the information that Hangfire needs to store in order to perform these background processes, retry them, scale them, etc. So I need to go ahead and create a bucket called that. I could use a staging bucket, but I really want this stuff to be isolated in its own bucket. Just need a small one, does not need to be huge, so I'll go with a minimum. And then what I probably would do in practice is to create another user that just has access, just the necessary access, like a read and write access to that bucket. I'm just going to keep it easy though and stick to administrator. And that's what this client configuration part is here for. So the Hangfire service, as far as I know, does not go off of does not interact with the dependency injection framework, so I have to sort of do this manually. And so it's going to be kind of what I did up there, very similar. So it's going to have connections of its own, but it's the same server, the same username. Whoops, what am I doing wrong here? Oh, it's client configuration, sorry. So I just need to tell servers, and that's the client configuration.authenticate, set authenticator to, this is going to be a new password authenticator, administrator, and password. So this is creating a configuration, and this is saying how to authenticate that connection, and then I'm passing all of that into Hangfire here as client configuration. This use Couchbase storage extension method, which also needs the bucket name specified there. All right, so that is the first step. Where did I put my, did I close it down? My own blog post here. Hangfire. There it is. Okay, and then, yeah, the second part, this is pretty common pattern in ASP.NET, is to go down to configure and say, yeah, we're going to use the Hangfire server. that's really it. So Hangfire is now officially set up as far as our application is concerned. Here's the configuration stuff I talked about. Now, what I need to do is actually start kicking off some jobs. To do that, and I can do it here in the, is it configure services? Is that where I don't actually say. But this is as good a place as any. At the end here, I'm just going to kick off a job. And so I'm going to call this nightly CSV export job. And what you do is when you want to create a recurring job, so recurring jobs.add or update, give it a name. I give it some expression to actually run. And then I also give it a cron expression. So there's some built-in expressions here. You can create these fluently. Also, you can just give it a regular old cron expression. So if you know cron, if you can understand, I don't understand that cron stuff at all. You can just use the built-in ones. So I can say daily at I don't know, probably like the first hour of the day, like 2 a.m. maybe. So 2 hour and 0 minutes. And we got to put something into this method, right? Let's see, body company or regression tree. Oh, I think it's like this. How did I do that over here? Yeah, okay. So I just need to say something like method call here that's going to be run nightly, if I can type it correctly, run nightly CSV export. Okay, and I can just create a method to do that right here. And all that's going to do is it's going to do the same thing that my controller was doing. It's going to have to run this one. Now, I don't have this export service, so the way I can do that is, well, there's a couple different ways. Let's see. I know I can get, is it services dot get, or maybe it's down here. Again, I'm going to have to look at my own project in the past because I can't remember for the life of me how I did this. Okay, I'm just opening the notepad. Couchbase storage authenticator. Okay, I'll actually do the recurring jobs down here in configure. And yes, this is all coming back to me now. So I can actually pass in these the services and repos as methods in configure. Okay, yes, so I'm doing this wrong. This needs to go out from here, from here down to here. Can't even operate copy and paste. Okay, and I'm just going to put this in a little section, recurring jobs. I only expect to have 2 of these for the whole application, so just putting them here is fine. All right. So what I'm going to use is loyalty CSV is just loyalty CSV export service. So I'll just add that here. Do some method injection. Export service. And really all I need to do is just change this to export CSV. And there we go. So I've just, with basically 3 lines of code, I've said right here, well, it's more than 3, but you get the idea. Here's how to connect to Couchbase. Hey, Hangfire, use that to connect to this Couchbase bucket and use that to store information you need to keep running jobs on a regular basis. And then, we can get rid of this part. And then down here I said, hey, ASP.NET, use Hangfire. And finally, hey, Hangfire, here's a recurring job I want you to run every day at 2 in the morning. execute this code right here. And that's it. Now, one other thing I need to add, this is not necessary, but it's very cool, is we're going to use the Hangfire dashboard. So I'll put that right up here. And I'm going to, just keep this simple here. I think that's all I need. Yep. And in fact, that may even be the default value. Yeah, so I don't even need that. I'm just saying I'll leave that in there for just being explicit. Saying create me a Hangfire dashboard so I can see all the processes that are running, if they've succeeded. I can kick them off manually, and so on. All right, so let's compile. Make sure everything compiles, and we'll go ahead and try it. So I'm going to be kicked off. The site's still going to go to Swagger page first. Hopefully it'll load up here in a second. It's sure taking a while. This may be because it's creating this Hangfire stuff for the first time. I don't see any documents in there yet, but there we go. So over here in another window, I'm going to bring up the Hangfire dashboard. Look at this. All this stuff comes out of the box with Hangfire. Here's my recurring jobs. Here's the one I created, nightly CSV export. So I can actually go ahead and fire it off right now if I want to. Or I could delete that. And I can see that here's the servers that I've got connected to Hangfire right now. So as I add more servers, if I wanted to scale out Hangfire, they'd all be listed here. So this is the name of my computer, actually, Crate Dragon. So it's just one computer that it's found and connected to this so far. And I can add more computers to my home network or whatever, connect them to the same Hangfire database, and they would be able to take over the same work. All right, so then recurring job. This isn't going to run. It's not going to run for another 8 hours. Does that seem right? It's 2:30 my local time right now. 8 hours would be 10:30 p.m. So I don't know what time zone this is on. But anyway, that's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my folder here where my CSV files are. Customer 360, examples, and there's this CSV exports folder. So I'm going to remove all these. No CSV files in there right now. Okay? And now I'm going to just manually kick off this task. And hopefully, if it doesn't break, we can go over here and see that, hey, this job is running. It's queued anyway. It should start running now if it doesn't bomb out. Look at that. CSV file shows up. So that job completed, succeeded, and I can drill into that and even see more detail about it. So this is all the stuff that Hangfire is doing for me. It knows how to create this code. There's the state of it, how long it took, all this kind of stuff is there. I can requeue it, so it'll automatically retry a certain number of times, but eventually it'll say, okay, enough, this won't work. I can come back in here and requeue it automatically. And this job will actually be cleaned up out of the database, and according here by default, a day. If I go back to my Couchbase, this is all the stuff that Hangfire has created by itself to keep track of everything that's going on. I don't need to worry about this data. This is all just stuff that Hangfire is working with. But for instance, I could see that I've got this recurring job document. We got some stats about a job that succeeded. Some more succeeded stuff. All kinds of data in here that Hangfire is using to execute these jobs, keep track of them, and also to keep this nice dashboard running. And you can see it keeps a history of stuff in this graph. How many jobs succeeded, how many failed. This is real time as jobs come in. Right now, nothing's happening. It's not going to happen until, and again, we can see 8 hours is going to be executed next, or 7 hours. I wonder what. That's weird. It says 10 p.m. I don't know what's going on with the time zones there, but anyway, all this stuff comes out of the box with Hangfire. Great. It's great stuff. So right now I've got exporting the CSV file every day at that time. So the next thing I'm going to do is create another recurring job. Add our update, and this is going to be, I call this one nightly CSV export. It's going to be nightly CSV import. And it's going to also use another service, which I'll just go ahead and add right here. Loyalty CSV import service. And again, normally these would not be in the same process. What would be the point of that in reality? But we're doing a tutorial here. And we're going to import CSV. And I'm going to say cron.daily. And now I'm going to have it like at hour 2, but well, let's do hour 3 just to be safe. We'll let it sit there in that folder for a whole hour before I kick off the job to import it. That gives this job enough time to get through potentially large set of records and write them to disk. Of course, this is one of the dangers of this method of moving data around. You're sort of depending on the file system and depending on the program creating the CSV to create it, have it be there, have it be correct, and then you have to go and fetch it. As opposed to the Kafka system we created before, which is more of a smooth system of moving data in real time. But, you know, sometimes you have to do a CSV import like this. That's totally fine. And I'll just say minute 0 just to be explicit there. What do you guys think of this? This is a resharper feature right here where it actually kind of, I'm pointing to the screen like that's going to make a difference. We're doing a control through. Nope, that's not it. Where it actually kind of shows you the name of the parameter. This is not something Visual Studio does, I don't think. This is something that ReSharper adds to be more explicit about the parameters you're adding. At first, I wasn't sure I liked it, as it just makes the code look longer. But I don't know, it kind of helps me to read what's going on a little better. All right, so I'll compile that. Let me go back into Couchbase here. I'm going to, in my staging buckets, all those documents expired because I set a TTL on them, if you remember. So they're all gone now. I didn't delete those explicitly. Those just disappeared. And go back to here, and we'll go to Hangfire again. And we see we have 2 recurring jobs now. This one, the export runs in 7 hours. The import runs in 8 hours, which makes sense to me. Now, I already ran this one manually, so we've got this CSV file out there. And it has 14 records in it. I want those records to be in Couchbase. There's 0 records in there right now. I'm just go ahead and trigger this manually. So it's going to run that job, and there we go. Records are in Couchbase now. So there we have it. Imagine being a professional developer not setting chroma key correctly. So I'm not using a green screen. KITN, other great. I'm not using a green screen at all. I'm using a tool called Chroma Cam, which removes the background just based on its own magic. You can see the little Chroma Cam logo here. I've not purchased a green screen yet. I don't really want to go through the hassle of setting up a green screen and tearing it down and that kind of stuff. So I'm just sort of evaluating this Chroma Cam thing. By the way, I think it's perfectly possible to be a professional developer and not understand green screen and chroma key and all that kind of stuff. There was no chroma key classes in college. Until Twitch came along, I never had any need to worry about that stuff. But anyway, I can't really do any more adjustments to it. Chroma Cam is just sort of figuring this out on the go and filtering out my background. Is it annoying? Is it bothering you? Because like I said, I'm evaluating it, and I'm just trying to figure out if I need to actually spend the time to put up a real green screen and stuff like that. So you're the first one that's come along that's brought it up. So thank you for leaving that comment. And again, I'm just sort of evaluating as I go along. I suspect that most people aren't here to look at me, as gorgeous and handsome as I am. They're here to look at the code that I'm putting on. So I don't know. That's something I'm thinking about as I evaluate this. I really just started doing this like last week. So thanks for stopping by, though. Appreciate it. However you pronounce your name. Kitten Other Great. Kitten Other Great? Your other great kitten? I like it. All right. So let's go back. Oh, and thank you. I want to say thank you to Past Me for blogging this stuff, so I remember it. I want to go back to my diagram here. So just to recap, this Kafka stream, we did that last week. That's all working just fine. Today, we got the loyalty program communicating through a nightly CSV into our staging table. And we got that running on a regular basis with Hangfire, which was pretty quick and smooth. And how are we doing on time, by the way? We're just about halfway through my normal scheduled time here. So I think at this point, it's probably good to do some commits to GitHub. All right, so we'll just review the diff here. And I still have some to-dos left in there. I might want to revisit those, but I think we covered all that. May want to add logging. That's what we can do next. I renamed this file because I spelled loyalty wrong. And we got the Hangfire added. Yep, and we added Hangfire to the startup here as well. And we got a recurring job set up. So added recurring CSV import and export via Hangfire. And I'll go ahead and push that out to GitHub. This is all this code is. If you're interested in checking out all the details, it's all out there on GitHub in the Couchbase Labs. I'll bring it up here after I commit. In the Couchbase Labs GitHub area under tutorials contrib. This is actually work that I'm doing for tutorials that are going to go onto the Couchbase tutorials website. And so they're in a branch right now called Customer 360 Ingestion because I don't want them to be, any of this stuff to be pushed out to the staging or the production tutorial site yet, but it's a branch here called Customer 360 Ingestion. And if you go into modules, Customer 360, under examples, there's a simulator that we're working on. And some other stuff that I covered in previous streams is also there. Okay, so this stuff will also expire, as I mentioned before. And actually, if you look in Couchbase, you'll see it's got a value here for expiration, which means that this document will expire. If this document was not set to expire, you'd see a 0 here for expiration. Okay, so why don't we think about adding some logging? Always a good idea to add logging. Any suggestions for favorite logging libraries? There are a lot out there, even in the .NET world. We'll add it here. So there's log4net, which is right here, 28 million. And there's nlog, 25 million. If we're going by popularity, log4net is winning. There's a few others. What I think I look for most is if they implement the common logging framework, because that'll give me some other capabilities. So I know log4net, I know nlog, both do. Any other suggestions for logging libraries out there? We could just do a quick Google search for it. .NET logging frameworks, sure. This one benchmarks 5 popular ones. I'm not too concerned about benchmarks and performance. Oh yeah, Elma's another one. NSpring and Microsoft Enterprise Library. So this was written, when was this written? This was 2016. So it's, you know, about 3 years old. It looks like they've, this is performance. So nlog looks to be the fastest, I guess. Yeah, nlog was the fastest. You know, whatever with the speed, you know, as long, I mean, we're talking, this is 100,000 logging events and how many seconds it takes, I guess, to log those events. I mean, that's a lot of stuff to log. So I'm not too concerned about benchmarking for this, but I am concerned about keeping track of what's happening in my log. So why don't we start with log4net if there's no other objections or strong feelings. I don't have any particular allegiance to these, but we'll just start with log4net and Just getting distracted here by Twitter and email. Always good to take a little breath and see what's going on in the world. The Michael Jolly is live right now, so if you're bored by what's going on this channel, definitely check out the Michael Jolly. He might be playing some guitar for you. All right, not much else going on. So let's do a, I don't know, let's just do, I don't memorize a lot of the log4net stuff, so let's just do a log4net quick start, see if something like that. That one's pretty old, 2009. Let's just type ASP.NET Core on there. How to use log4net with ASP.NET Core for logging. This is a couple years old, but this might work. Let's see. Looks like a lot of work. There's got to be an easier way to do it than that. Stack Overflow. Oh, is there a big XML config file that I need? This is what I'm looking for right here. Yes. Logger factory, add for log4net ASP.NET Core. That's what I'm looking for, I think. Log4net ASP.NET Core. This was last updated 2 years ago. It's interesting. What's this one? Log4net extensions ASP.NET Core. It's also updated about 2 years ago. Not that I expect logging frameworks to be constantly updated. You know, it should be pretty boring and pretty straightforward, in my opinion anyway. Just kind of want to easy get started with this to start adding some logging in. Nothing too fancy. Yeah, I don't really want to specify an XML file. Not what I want to do. All right, well, let's just try this one. Install that. Okay, then in startup, back to this logger factory. So that comes in where? That's in configure? Yeah, configure. So I need to add another one here. Logger factory. I think I want Microsoft extensions, right? Yeah, and then I say logger factory dot add log4net. I don't know what the default is going to be there. Options. Just a string? Really? That can't be right. Log4net provider options. Okay. Options equals new. Log4net provider options. So what kind of options do I have? Options dot name, config file name, repository, scope factory, watch, all kinds of interesting stuff there. We'll just see what happens when I just leave it at default. Okay. And this extension allows for logs. Yeah, okay. I don't care log scopes necessarily. So does that mean I can now in my let's just create a test harness for it here. Before I go any further, just create a test logging endpoint. And I would expect this to specify it. This to pass me an iLogger. Again, I'm not really sure which one, but let's just try that. Logger dot. Oh, oopsie daisy. Got to introduce that field there. Underscore logger. Dot log, and I'll just say hello world. Is that not it? Not the right signature? Oh, I gotta specify log level. Log level, just information and message. Hello world. Return OK. And we'll just put an error in there. This is an error. That's the thing with logging frameworks, is you have different levels of logging. Some of them are just informational. Some of them are for debugging purposes. What else is in here? Log level, critical, trace, warning. These are all things you'd expect from log output, which you would then probably feed into some other tool that you could use to analyze logs and act on them, that sort of thing. I'm just going to just try this out here with our testing framework. And I'm guessing a log file is going to appear somewhere in my file system. Oh, exception. I don't have a log4net config. So maybe I do need a log4net config file. It's trying to find this log4net config. So it's not going to give me any default settings. Just some examples. Anything crazy here. Log4net. Let's see. Config examples. Isn't that where I was? I was just there. Okay. Appender, access. Oh, this is if I want to, okay, configure it to use a database. I don't care about that. I just want a text file probably. File appender. Write messages to a file. This will be appended to, yeah, that'll be fine. So do I add a config file for that? And where do I add the config file? In here? New item. Log4net config. And I guess I'll just put that in there and see what happens. Same error, so it can't find log4net config. Building an example. I don't know what all this stuff is. Building? I don't need to build it. How to view logging events using chainsaw. So that's one of those tools, I guess, that could import your standard log files. Introduction. Yeah, all this stuff is great, but I'm trying to figure out just how to get started. Just a quick start. Log4net. Example apps. Source. I don't necessarily. This is on GitHub or something. Oh yeah, GitHub. There's some examples in here. Example? .NET. Why not? I don't see a log4net config file in here. Does anybody else see one? Is it nant config? No, that's for building. That's what I used to use nant. Long time ago. A lot of nant in here. A lot of nant. Well. Does this need to go into the output directory? Maybe that's what needs to happen. Try that again. Wait, it's working this time. Okay. So then if I go to test logging and try it out, let's see what happens. Oh, got an error. What did I do? Oh boy, what happened? Unable to resolve service type for, okay. Okay. Does that mean that instead of that, I use this one? Just a different namespace? Build errors. Log level. Does not exist. Logger dot log. This is a different new logging event, and yeah, okay. I'm definitely in the weeds here, everyone, so I may come back to this because I think I am lost. Pretty sure this is supposed to be Microsoft extensions logging. Because I'm using the add log for net here. Log for net, ASP net core. You get to see all the sausage made of all the Googling that developers do, at least I do anyway, all the time. I don't know what I'm doing. Let's go back to this one and see if there's any information there. Okay, yeah, this is really what I wanted. I wanted this part here. Adding log for net, so you don't have to run a boilerplating code. Interesting. Startup, fine. Add log for net. Yep. Coral, I don't think I've ever used Bing. Yes, I use Bing all the time. I use Bing. I like Bing. I've been using it for a long time, and plus, since I use Bing, I get like Bing points, which I can then turn into gift cards. So I've probably made, Bing has probably given me, I don't know, $200 worth of Amazon gift cards at this point. You know, it's not a ton, but I like Bing. Did I say Google though? I think I said Google. That's a no-no. I'm not supposed to say. You're not supposed to say Google. Like you're not supposed to say Kleenex or tissue. Whatever. So sue me, Google. No, sorry. Don't sue me, Google. Okay. Logger. Where is that logger coming from? I'm definitely doing something wrong here. I'm doing this part right, I think. I added this config file. Let's just say this is just more config documentation. Logger factory. Yeah, everything looks good there. Configuration. Yep. That looks good. There's not an example of using it in a controller. We're going to figure this out because logging is important. Logger factory. Let's try that. And then what can I do with logger factory? Create logger. Of category? I don't know what that does. Let's find out. Hasn't crashed. Looks like it did something. All right. Tutorials, contrib, modules, customer 360, examples. All right, looking for some sort of log file. It's going to be in here. Did it say the file name? I specify a file name in here? Log-file. I don't see a log-file. .txt. Bring it trusty everything. Log-file txt. Don't see log-file created anywhere. So I still don't think I'm doing it right. What was the error message I was getting? Oh, they're cutting again. The error message I was getting was unable to resolve service for that type. Why don't I just Google this? Maybe that'll tell me something. Log4net. Unable to resolve service type. Core Stack Overflow is the top result. All right. Yeah, okay. The issue is related to iHost Builder. Let's see, configure logging. Is it using Log4net here? No, not using Log4net. What else? Looks like the error message I'm getting.
Bada bing, bada boom.
New follower, S Time Stream. Thank you very much for following in the midst of these riveting logging issues. Thank you very much for following. I hope you all are having a good day. I'm not having a great time right now because I can't figure out this whole logging issue. Give this one a try. iLogger, home controller. Use startup build. Yeah, it seems to be very similar to what I'm doing, the error I'm getting, and the suggestion here is I tried this logger factory thing, and that wasn't working. Let's try it again. And this will be logger factory. Category. Create logger instance is a category name. Is there a category in here? No? I don't see anything. Test my logging. Try it out. Execute. It succeeds, but there is no, as far as I can tell, log-file.txt. Is there a log-file anything? Is there anything with log-file in it? It looks like no. That's the file right here, log-file.txt. Well, what I typically do in these situations is I'll go and get myself like a drink or a snack, and I'll come back and it will be obvious what the problem is. So I think I might go ahead and do that and just cut the stream off for now and take a little break, and maybe my my second or third brain will kick in. That's a callback to earlier. But greetings from UK, Saya. S Time Stream. I'm not sure what Saya means. Are you saying see ya, like goodbye? If so, I'll see you as well. Just got to figure out this logging issue. See ya. Okay, here's a typo. I didn't know if that was a UK thing. I don't know, a city in UK. I have no idea. But thank you for stopping by. So let's just do a quick review here. We're trying to figure out, I'm trying to figure out the loyalty CSV export, no, loyalty CSV import. And the import's working. It's working just fine. The problem is I'm only using small amounts of data right now, and I want to put some logging in place here when things go wrong with bigger sets of imports of data. So I wanted to add some logging statements to here. Just trying to get logging to work. Just try to write a message to logging, and I'm struggling with that for some reason. I've done this before. I don't know why I'm having trouble this time. But CSV is working, and actually if we switch back over to our Couchbase, yeah, these documents are all gone now because they timed out. They TTL'd. Why does it keep doing that? Buckets. Okay. Yep, so no documents in there. So I imported them earlier. I set a time limit on them, and they're gone now. So that's all working just fine. I just want to add some logging here because I'm going to use this part of the code in the tutorial for sure. And I want to emphasize that logging is important. So I want to have at least one statement in here logging something just to emphasize if you're going to go this path and write an import program, put some logging in there. It's going to benefit you in the long term in production. But can't seem to get logging to work in ASP.NET. Trying log4net. Maybe I'll try nlog and have better results. I don't know. I'm probably just doing something wrong. Something really simple. But anyway, thanks everyone for joining me today. I appreciate the chat. Appreciate the questions. And I'll be back on for sure next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern U.S. time. And I'll probably do some streaming between now and then. I got some podcasting stuff to do. I've been messing around with VR streaming last night, and I've also got some soldering, some electronic stuff to put together. So I may get to some of that stuff between now and then. So stay tuned. But again, thank you everyone for getting me to affiliate status. That's very cool. STimeStream puts a little pog in there. I'm not sure what I said that deserves a pog, but thank you. And that's it. You all have a good day now, and we'll see you around. Calvin, no, don't cry. Don't cry. I'll be back.